Welcome back to Higurashi.
You didn't even hit.
I didn't. No, I did.
Oh, he did. He did.
Connor's trying to gaslight me again.
Welcome back to Korean terrorism Higurashi Power Hour.
Roof Korean time.
Yeah, roof Korean time.
Yeah. We just read a diary
About a dumb bitch.
by a wimpy mom.
TLDR crash course, both of you. We're not Keiichi, we're a cop. What, 6 years before the places of all the other games? And we gotta get back to our wife that's given birth.
Let's go. Oh, Midsummer 1985. That actually hurts.
Oh yeah, because you got the fucked up fingy.
Oh, man.
Jobber?
Sir. Hey, who wants to be a flight attendant?
I got it.
There she goes.
Sir, we're preparing to land. Excuse me, but will you please fasten your seatbelt?
Is this
Yeah.
Akasaka? That's good.
Yes.
Akasaka.
We're back to the future.
Back to Bruce.
We're back to the future.
Hey, body pal. Bruce, there we go, I got it. It seemed I had fallen fast asleep inside the plane. I was finally awoken from my slumber by the stewardess. I only had carry-on luggage on top of it being a domestic flight, so the time between disembarking and entering the lobby was almost non-existent. Arriving at the lobby, I glanced around looking for Oishi.
Oh, I hope you're ready for the best Oishi sprite.
Oh, we're in current day.
We're back in the future, yes.
Yeah, we're in current day.
We're 1970.
And I was met with a familiar,
1980.
gruff voice calling out to me.
Okasuka-san! The music is back.
I literally just came. I need to change my pants.
Here's
I
Oishi's
literally
thing.
just fucking came.
It's so jazzy.
It's very jazzy.
That's it.
I love Oishi, dude.
Oh, it's not Oishi's thing.
Yeah. Thinking about him.
Thinking about him. I already said it.
Oh, my bad.
How many years has it been? It's been a while, hasn't it?
Oishi-san, it really has been a long time. Oishi clapped his hand down on my shoulders, celebrating our reunion.
Okasuka-san, you're looking pretty good. You look like a bona fide frontline investigator now.
Hey, you're looking quite dapper yourself. Your posture seems a lot better. Is the ballroom dancing paying off?
You should give it a try while you're still young. You'd be a hit with the ladies. A real babe magnet.
Married, by the way.
Oishi had retired and moved to South Sapporo, and of all the things, he had started taking ballroom dancing lessons. He had apparently gotten really into it and decided to spend the rest of his new life devoted to that hobby. He was aiming to get his instructor's qualification before he hit 80 and live out his old age dandily. I let myself into Oishi's car and we headed out towards the hot spring inn. I had originally intended to crash at Oishi's place, but Oishi was quite obstinate that his home wasn't suitable for that, so it came to this. At the inn, we relaxed while soaking in the hot springs, reminiscing about the time we played mahjong together in Hinamizawa.
I hope you're ready.
It seemed that
Naked Oishi?
Better.
It seemed that to celebrate our reunion, Oishi had looked for people who can play, but unable to find a suitable candidate, we had to give up on putting together a table. As we drank together, we excitedly recounted our exploits during the final manhunt. They end up catching those two guys.
There it is!
Yo! How bad does the new one look? Okay, that actually looks good as fuck.
That's not bad. I actually really like that sprite.
Minus, like, Oishi
you know
looking
Oishi's
crusty,
face.
but,
The
like,
worst
yeah.
part about his Oishi,
Yeah, mine.
His
mine
outfit
is,
looking
like,
banging.
Yeah, his outfit's drip out, bro.
Nope. In the end, the such team never found him. They were probably hidden by the villagers, then sent overseas or somewhere else far away to lay low for a bit.
Oishi-san, if I remember correctly, you managed to grab one of their guns, didn't you? Did you learn anything from that?
It was a Chinese-made military pistol. It's probably one of the from the ones the Gaines and Kensai managed to smuggle in a ton of. We tried to get a match from the rifling, but it didn't show up in any other cases. How about on your end?
After that, I was removed from the front lines, so I don't know much. In the end, it seemed like everything was settled under the veil of secrecy.
No.
Oishi smiled wryly as he sipped his chilled drink.
What happened after that? So was tough, huh? This will be 7 years now.
Did his fucking wife die? You telling me Yukie got killed? God damn
Yukie's
it.
dead? What?
Yeah. We held the memorial service a few days ago. I've become estranged with my father-in-law lately, so it was rough getting everything ready.
Did Hinamizawa really kill Yukie? Did she die during childbirth like I called? God damn.
That must have been a lot of work.
It was then that the hostess brought in extra drinks that we had ordered before. While the bottles of beer clanked as she brought them in, we halted our conversation. What Oishi meant when he said it must have been tough. Thinking about that was still hard, but time had healed the wound.
God damn it, Yukie died. God damn it, Bruce Willis. Oh shit.
Why would you?
You fool.
I didn't see it was a page.
You fool.
It was the day after. When I phoned Oishi to apologize, when I did, Oishi almost immediately handed the phone to one of my colleagues, who happened to be there. Not only was I injured in the brawl with the suspects, but I disappeared to drink late into the night without leaving any sort of contact information, so I thought he'd definitely be mad. However, all he said that it was something he couldn't talk about over the phone, and that I should come to the station as soon as possible. At the time, I could only think that he must have been really pissed off. But when I arrived at the station, he said this.
It seems your wife was involved in an accident.
I have no idea what happened. I borrowed the phone to contact the hospital Yukie was staying at. After being given the runaround several times, I was finally able to talk to someone in charge. After mincing words for quite some time, they told me.
Yukie Akasaka was killed in an accident.
Did they fucking Sonozaki kill her in the hospital in Tokyo? There's no shot they know that much, right? I mean, they kidnapped the kid in Tokyo. They probably,
Tokyo.
there's no shot the Sonozaki's fucking off his wife. Ain't no way.
The world became a blur as I sat there dumbfounded. Yukie's death was unbelievably abrupt, unbelievably sudden. I could have understood if there was some kind of problem during the birth, but Yukie's death wasn't anything like that. On the stairs on the way up to the roof, she just happened to slip and fall. And she just happened to fall on an unfortunate place at an unfortunate angle. That was it. Wanting to blame Yukie's death on somebody, I began to think there was an act of revenge by the Defense Alliance, that they killed my wife and made it look like an accident. What I learned when I flew back to Tokyo, however, was much more cruel than that. Yukie had a habit of going up to the roof to cool off in the evenings. There was an elevator up to the 7th floor, but from there you had to take the stairs to get to the roof. Even late in her pregnancy, when the evening came, she would always head up there. Her father had always said for her not to push herself, but Yukie's insisted that until the time she had no choice but to stay in bed, she should be allowed to do as she wished. However, I never once seen Yukie go up to the roof. I only heard that from her father and the nurses. That was because whenever I visited her, she would spend the time with me instead. I heard the reason why Yukie went up to the roof from a nurse she had become friendly with. She had said that her husband was away on business a lot of the time, and that whenever he called, she was able to cheer him up by giving him courage, but when he didn't call, she couldn't do that. Her husband might put on a show of bravado, but in reality, he grew lonesome pathetically fast. She was probably just the same. Whenever he left for business, not clear when he'd be back, she felt very lonely. Whenever she cheered him up, she was actually cheering herself up as well. That's why, whenever he went far away for an important job, on the evenings he didn't call, at the very least, she felt that standing underneath the same sky, her feelings would reach him.
That's the sweetest fucking thing I've ever read in this entire game.
Yeah.
Yukie has the most tragic death in the entirety of the game. Fuck Sadako. Fuck everyone else.
Rico was right.
Rika was right. Yeah,
Yeah. He was
it's his wife.
Akasaka's wife.
Akasaka's wife, who was
Pregnant
also
wife.
pregnant.
Yeah. About to give birth.
Yeah, at that moment, I remembered the words that girl had told me. That it was best I go back to Tokyo right away. Otherwise, there would be something I regret horribly. Yeah, that's it. Because I was away on business that day, Yukie headed up to the roof. Had I known this would have been the result, had I done as the girl had said and dropped everything and headed back to Tokyo, might have been with Yukie on the day she died. If I was with her, she wouldn't have gone up to the roof. That day my wife died was on the evening of the third day of my trip. Yeah, it was right before the time I had the sudden urge to hear Yukie's voice and ran around the village trying to find a phone. The girl had gone around and cut all the phone cords. If she hadn't, and I had made that call, I would have undoubtedly learned of Yukie's death at that time and collapsed in tears. Of course, even though the cords were cut, it had only put off learning of Yukie's death by that one evening. In the end, I had learned of it the next morning. However, when I managed to put my emotions in order, I realized it was that girl's small token of consideration.
That's the first I've heard about that.
Yeah, it's the first time I've talked about it.
No, could have been a coincidence. She didn't have any special powers or anything.
Aren't you the one who told me, Oishi-san? That she might be the reincarnation of the god called Oyashiro-sama.
Well, yes. Oh, the old folks in the village believes that Rika Furude had divine powers.
Divine powers. Oishi had originally said it as some kind of joke, but realizing that I was serious, he slumped his shoulders.
I don't know if it's the truth or not. They said she did things like prophesize the future, or talk about things she should have no way of knowing about. That she was clairvoyant and that it was divine revelation. Oh, all sorts of things. Of course, they couldn't give specific examples, though, no.
She prophesied Yukie's accident. Oishi tried to laugh it off, but out of respect to my deceased wife, he kept it restrained.
Does that mean an active and capable investigator from the Metropolitan Police Department believes in divine powers and curses?
Having him say that so bluntly, I couldn't respond. Of course, I had no intention of believing such odd things.
And then he doesn't bring up any of the freak deaths in Watanagashi and how she called, in Hinamizawa, and how she called every single one.
Never brings it up.
L.
But you can only say that because he didn't know what I did. Oh, there it is. Since I met the other girl, who both was and wasn't Rika Furude,
Did you know Ryukishi wrote these books for me?
I couldn't deny the existence of any other world entity. Of course, I can't deny it might not have been precedence, but rather prescience, but rather a warning. Not prescience, but a warning. If what that girl has said was a warning about Yuki's accident, then things become much easier to understand. Basically, the line of thinking became that it was a threat. Because I didn't go back to Tokyo, my wife was killed in a way that made it look like an accident.
Not satisfied with the investigation into your wife's accident.
Yeah, of course I suspected foul play. I pored over the result and even carried out my own personal investigation. There weren't any witnesses to Yukie's fall. There was the possibility that someone had hidden, waiting to push Yukie down the stairs. However, the cleaning ladies frequented the roof to hang laundry, and the security cameras on each floor hadn't recorded anything out of the ordinary. There wasn't anything set up on the stairs, and I was unable to find anything suspicious. In the end, even after my personal investigation, I can't think that anything else happened other than a simple accident. Well, of course. These were the guys that took the minister's grandson hostage. Wouldn't be impossible for them to push a lone pregnant woman down the stairs without leaving any evidence. Oishi's expression completely sobered up.
They murdered your wife.
When Yukie died, I thought that as well. More precisely, I wanted to blame somebody, so I created the most viable scapegoat. But without any clear evidence, that violent notion faded along with the wounds in my heart. Did that girl know beforehand about my wife's death and was threatening me? Or did she prophesize that death and was offering me a road to salvation? If I had to choose between the two, I would tend to lean towards the latter.
No.
Oishi smiled slightly in disbelief as he poured more beer from his bottle. That's
Then if I may, if what you say is true, then Rika Furude was a prophet who knew the future. If so, why didn't she predict that disaster? If she knows about that the gas eruption was going to happen, why did she remain silent? Even a few hours beforehand would have been enough. If the village knew, then most of the people would have escaped without dying.
Is it because she can't prophesize past her own death? Because she died before the disaster.
He died before the disaster, so how
So, if we go into the time looping theory, right?
Right.
So then Rika would live up until she's killed, and then Groundhog Day back to the start. So she wouldn't know anything past when she dies.
Remember how she was talking to Akasaka? She's like, maybe somebody put a cloth up to her mouth and put her to sleep, and then she won't wake up again. Then, yeah, she doesn't remember anything after her death.
Yeah. So then she wouldn't be able to predict the gas eruption because it wouldn't have happened when she was alive.
She probably doesn't even know it happened.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, exactly. Because in no timeline she lives up to the gas eruption. Because we've only had it happen once, and it was in Tatanagaroshi, and she was dead by that time in Onikakushi and in Watanagashi.
And you could say, since her death varies, because she was talking about maybe, or it's this day, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a few days
sooner or
after.
later.
Maybe it seems like the disaster requires her death.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't happen until after she dies. So then it's back to the question of who's trying to kill Rika to cause whatever.
Who has the motivation to cause the Great Hinamizawa disaster?
It's Oishi.
It's Oishi, clearly.
We circle back every time to Oishi's the villain.
It was
Is that the car with air conditioning isn't enough. I need a whole village with air conditioning.
It was near the end of June 1983. Volcanic gases from the Onikafuchi swamp erupted and hit the village in the middle of the night. It was an unprecedented disaster where the whole populace was wiped out. It caused a wave of panic about volcanic gases across the country, causing people to overreact to any report of odd smells. I hadn't heard of the blockade on Hinamizawa area being lifted, so it should still be cordoned off. It was my turn to be lost for a response.
Well, Rika Furei, the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama was killed. Then the village might have incurred the god's wrath, making him call forth the miasma from the swamp to kill everyone. That explanation is what the survivors are whispering about.
Sorry, Oishi-san. Did you just say she was killed?
Oh, yeah, duh. Well, I don't think it would be a problem if I told you.
When I saw the news about the gas disaster, I remembered that girl. I then found her name in the list of victims. That's why at the time, I thought her own death she had predicted was due to the gas. It was after that I learned from the tabloids of the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa during the 5 years leading up to the disaster that became known as the Curse of Oyashiro-sama. And the string of mysterious deaths lined up exactly with what the girl had predicted. So I'd always thought to ask Oishi about it, as he had been involved in the investigation. That's right. That was the reason for our reunion. But right now, Oishi had said, Rika Furude didn't die in the disaster, but was killed? Can I ask you about the last year of the curse?
I may be retired, but I still have to keep things confidential here. No.
Excuse me, madam. Do you have anything cold that's brewed locally? High grade, if there is. I'll leave the selection to you.
No, oh my! I didn't mean it that way.
I love Oishi.
Oishi laughed loudly, not wholly unsatisfied, and stopped the hostess to tell her that cheap booze was fine.
The Mion Sonozaki audio bell.
Audio bell. This is
Akasaka. I know as much as was written in those magazines, but I didn't know anything about the curse that happened the year of the disaster.
Because the entire area around Hinamizawa was sealed off, you see.
Wait, that means Oishi lives. Duh. Because this is after the disaster, so Oishi doesn't.
But
die.
if you remember, did you remember reading the victims list?
Yeah, Oishi's in it
Oishi's
as
here-
missing.
as missing.
Yeah,
So but he's here.
yeah.
So
Oishi
it's a
didn't-
clear discrepancy. Something's different here.
Yeah. No, you're right. Sorry. Oh,
It wasn't much of an investigation that could be done on the last year of the
No,
curse.
no.
oh no, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that, quite.
So it wasn't much of an investigation that could have been done on the last year of the course. Even after several years, the quarantine is lifted. Even if, after several years, the quarantine is lifted, the villagers are mostly dead. And what few survivors are, were mostly went to stay with relatives, so whereabouts mostly unknown. It's a complete dead end.
Oishi seemed to postulate to himself as he stared at the ceiling, as if trying to work out a memory from the rusty cogs in his head. And then he said in a completely sober voice,
The magazines made it seem like the curse of the first year was that disaster. But the actual curse really happened on the day of the Watanakoshi Festival. A photographer by the name of Jiro Tomitoke. He was the victim.
Okay, so this is different than Tatanagurushi. Got it.
Oishi gestured
Is
about
it?
how.
Well, kind of. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if it happened after the curse.
It still happened in Tatari Garushi.
Yeah, but in Tatari Garoshi,
Keiichi kills Sadaka's uncle, Tepe.
which Oishi knew about, they knew that that Sadako's uncle had disappeared.
Mm-hmm. But they suspected Keiichi.
They suspected Keiichi, yeah. Okay, all right. We'll keep rolling.
Oishi gestured about how the victim tore at his own throat with his fingernails as he talked.
In the burnt corpse of the woman Tomitoke was in a relationship with was found in the mountains in Gifu. The Gifu prefectural police weren't very cooperative, so I don't know much about it though.
There were 2 victims in one night.
Actually, it wasn't just those two. You see, the next day, Kumagai-kun, one of my subordinates, disappeared along with his car in the middle of investigation.
Kumagai was a younger detective that was going to be partnered with Oishi after we first met.
He was going around the village to question people about the incident with Tomitoke. He might have been caught up in something. If he was with me, he might have been safe. Even now, it still stinks. That day, for some reason, I did a real number on my stomach. I had to pass on going around outside.
He got too close to the truth and he was made to disappear.
That's what I think. Kuma-chan was young and had a promising future ahead of him, but he still didn't have enough experience on the scene. He wasn't used to dealing with any complications.
Oishi lamented the fact that he wasn't with his subordinate that day.
And then the next day you you know him well, like his son. You know, Dr. Irie. You remember him?
Ah, that young doctor from the hospital. I vaguely remember.
For whatever reason, he committed suicide with sleeping pills. No suicide note or anything. The autopsy confirmed that it was the sleeping pills. Nothing was in doubt except for that motive.
It isn't that hard to make it look like somebody died from taking sleeping pills, is it? Any possibility it was murder?
He was single, no prior marriages, and didn't seem like he was going out with anybody in particular. He was the coach of the local junior baseball team and was on good terms with the villagers. He was liked by everybody. I couldn't find anybody who wanted to do him harm. Well, any chances to investigate were ruined by the disaster though. There's no way to find out anything about him now.
I can't wait for the culprit to be like Rena.
What do you think Iude's death is related to Keiji at all? Do you think because last time Keiji took the credit because he
Yeah, yeah,
cursed
yeah.
him to death,
Yeah.
but it seems like seems like a different outcome than
Yeah, it's different than Tatari
Higurashi. So
I don't know. You gotta let me finish and I can think about it.
What about Rika Furude's death?
It was the day of. Around noon, some of the old folks who were visiting the shrine discovered the corpse of Rika Furude.
Murder.
Before we continue, you should probably stop eating that squid salmon.
Not bad. Oishi nodded firmly.
Mm-hmm. The corpse was found on the shrine grounds, next to the donation box, although she was probably killed somebody else. That's because while she was completely naked, there wasn't any thoughts on the soles of her feet.
Any sign it was some sort of sexual assault?
According to the autopsy, there wasn't any indication of it. What we know is that she was rendered unconscious by some sort of drug, carried to that place, then had her abdomen sliced wide open. Her organs were deliberately removed and scattered about.
Unconscious. Then she wasn't cut open after her death. That's horrible. That girl's prediction was right on the mark. I'm pretty sure she was more detailed about the other deaths that led up to her own. For example, I think she said that housewife was beaten to death on the 4th year, had her head split open. Then in that case, did she know her own death would be so terrible? Must have been some moments where she wanted to doubt the validity of her own predictions, but as people died exactly as prophesied as the years passed, the prophecy would only come closer to fruition. And then, facing the final year, unable to struggle against her own destiny, her all too young life was snuffed out. And then, such a cruel way. Knowing that her days were numbered and unable to fight the tide of events heralding her end, my heart ached at her helplessness.
About the way she died, it seems like it wasn't just somebody's sick tastes. What I'm saying is, I've told you about how about how Hinamizawa used to be home to demons, didn't I?
Yeah, I think I remember.
The festival in Hinamizawa village for Tonagashi, the cotton drift, seems to stem from the drifting of entrails. It seems that it came from the man-eating demons ripping apart the victims and throwing the organs into the river.
In other words, in Hinamizawa, pulling out entrails had some sort of religious meaning.
Well, this is according to old tales in Hinamizawa, you'll see. To act as an arbitrator so that the humans and man-eating demons could live together peacefully, a god known as Oyashiro-sama descended from the heavens.
If I recall, Rika Furude was said to be the living incarnation of that Oyashiro-sama, wasn't she?
So, cutting open Rika Furude, who was a living god, would be to the village nothing less than absolute sacrilege.
Absolute sacrilege. In other words, you mean sacrilege towards Oyashiro-sama.
The rest, you should know, Akisaka-san. The rest of Oyashiro-sama would occur that same year? What?
Same night.
Same night.
The Great Hinamizawa Disaster. The official explanation was that some swamp upstream erupted with toxic volcanic gas, which enveloped the village.
The swamp where it erupted was called Onigafuchi Swamp. It was the origin of Hinamizawa's old name, Onigafuchi Village. According to village lore, the depths of the swamp apparently led to hell, where the man-eating demons came from.
That almost seems too perfect.
No, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There was another bit of folklore in the village. If Oyashiro-sama became angry, the cauldron of hell would open up and miasma would flow out, or so they say.
To the villagers, hell was at the bottom of the swamp. So basically the miasma poured out, smothering the village.
It's basically due to the sacrilegious way This freak of Rude, the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, was killed. The village incurred the wrath of Oyashiro-sama in the form of that disaster. That seems to be the explanation.
So what you're saying is that the disaster wasn't a natural one.
Well, everything does seem to fit together a little too well. If Oyashiro-sama's curse doesn't really exist, and everything really was just a coincidence, I would doubt it.
A wry smile formed on Oishi's face as he listened to my absurd take on things. He wore an expression as though, even if it were absurd, there was a time when he had thought the same thing
I
as
think
well.
that was Akasaka there.
Yeah, it might have been Akasaka.
In regards to the
This is definitely Oishi.
In regards to the religious beliefs of the villagers, suppose there were more fanatical. I'm not sure. No. Yeah, it's Akasaka than Oishi.
In regards to the religious beliefs of the villagers, suppose there were a more fanatical following among them, and that group created a situation that would incur Oyashiro-sama's wrath and enact a disaster to make it seem like the truth.
Of course, I won't laugh. I've wondered in that line of reasoning more than once myself. However, even though Hinamizawa is a small village, it still has a population of over 1,000 people. To murder that many people in a single night doesn't seem realistic, no matter how you think about it.
Remember when I talked about in Watanagashi there being the inner circle?
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
But he was just saying like how it doesn't make sense because they killed over like 1,000 people,
With the gas.
like nearly
Yeah,
2,000
with
people.
Gas. With the gas. You know, they use gas. You know what I'm saying?
Gas,
Gas.
gas,
Gas.
gas,
Gas.
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 Reddit got fucking farted.
No!
The gas eruption was believed to have happened around 2 a.m., several hours before dawn. In that short amount of time, going around and killing other villagers in a way that made it look like a poisonous gas didn't seem feasible at all.
The swamp the gas erupted from was still had some religious
Significance.
Is it Sakasaka?
God damn.
The swamp that the gas erupted from still had some religious significance, didn't it? If that's the case, then maybe there was something set up in the swamp. Something that could be activated whenever a divine verdict was rendered.
According to the JSTF press release, the swamp was declared the source of the eruption. This was after everything was thoroughly looked over by the investigation team. If anything like that was set up, I think they would have found it.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be in the swamp itself. Come on, you haven't even heard about it. The old story about how when a faraway spring dried up, the village's spring dried up as well.
What do you mean by that?
Many waterways are connected by underground aquifers. Swamps and springs are only the parts that manage to pop above the surface.
So what you're saying is that Onigafuchi Swamp is connected to another swamp or spring, and there's something the villagers rigged up there long ago. Something that changes the pressure of Onigafuchi Swamp, causing it to erupt with poison gas. Is that what you're getting at?
Oishi laughed heartily, commending the fact that the youngins have a nice flexible way of thinking. That was the former detective in him. Even though it was a hypothesis that he didn't come up with, he still had the presence of mind to not dismiss it right away.
That's an interesting theory. If that proves to be true, then it would be unprecedentedly the largest mass murder in the history of Japan.
Once the quarantine on Hinamizawa village is lifted, I think it should definitely be investigated. Oishi-san, you still have any connections with the Bullet Prefectural Police?
Somewhat. I'm an honorary advisor for the judo classes, so even I pop by on summer clinic caps as such.
I don't know when the quarantine on Hinamizawa village will be lifted, but please let me help investigate.
Got it.
Oishi-san, how do you feel about the string of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa they call the curse Oyashiro-sama?
At the time, the villagers were putting a lot of pressure on the station. The official stance on things was that the cases were unrelated. That each case was separate, each with its own resolution.
That couldn't be, even though it was blatantly obvious that the cases were connected based on the villagers' religious beliefs.
Son, we can only see that now because of the rather grandiose way things ended after 5 years. At the time, those coincidental incidents just happened to coincidentally occur on the day of the Watanagashi. Just say, it would be nice if nothing happens this year, kind of feel about it.
Coincidence. The girl predicted everything from the beginning.
Cool.
Rika Furude. That child warned me about all the incidents that would happen afterwards.
Akasaka-san, is it true?
Yeah. The girl said as much. That the next year the damn foreman would be killed and his corpse would be dismembered. Not only that, she warned me all the events that would transpire in the following years.
Akasaka-san, when she told you all that, what year was it?
When I met the girl, when I was investigating the kidnapping incident, so June of 1978.
The year before the dismemberment murder.
Wrinkles formed between Oishi's eyebrows as he closed his eyes and began to digest what I had just told him.
Akasaka-san, if you're wrong about Rika Furude knowing the future through some divine medium, this is getting ridiculous.
Yep.
If you're just trying to shock me, I'm going to be really angry, you know.
Speaking the truth.
Then the script behind the chain of mysterious deaths was written a year before it even started.
And just as predicted, Rika Furude was killed. At first, I thought she meant that she would be killed in the disaster. However, now that I know her death wasn't due to that, but rather an atrocious one at the hands of a murderer, she said she would be killed. At that point in time, she knew more or less how her own death would occur.
Then why didn't Rika Furude try... Then why did Rika Furude not try and run away? Even if her death was already spelled out for her, knowing that she still had the grace period of several years, didn't she? She had plenty of time to try and run away or consult the police. Why did she just accept her death with no resistance?
I don't know.
Even though Rika Furude was doted upon by the older villagers, you see, older folks in the villages, you see, after she lost her parents, she had no living relatives and lived a fairly solitary life other than hanging around with some close friends. It might have been she didn't have any power to fight or anybody to rely on.
She must have tried signaling somebody for help in regards to her own death, though.
You know very well that the village and the police weren't very amicable with one another, Akasaka-san. At the very least, I had never heard anything about Rika Furude seeking protection from anybody. Or it could be that she simply resigned herself to being a religious sacrifice. It could have been something like that.
Well, there's no way that was the case. I spoke decisively. At the time, she said it. So, she had definitely said that she wanted to live happily. That she wanted to spend her time surrounded by her dear friends. She hadn't given up on life. She had hoped to keep on living. At that moment, I became dumbstruck.
What's the matter, Akasaka-san?
No, it's nothing. I fell into a silence. Oishi folded his arms and began murmuring in contemplation again. Eventually, he stood up and headed towards the hallway to find the hostess, yelling that he wanted a pen and paper. When Oishi, noisy even though he was just thinking, left, the room immediately fell into a chilled silence. I stood up. It was then I realized that I was drunk enough to be unsteady on my feet. When I slid open the window, a beautiful yet somehow ephemeral, thank you. Somehow ephemeral moon drifted across the night sky. It was just now that I realized she hadn't accepted her own death. She wanted to keep living, happily and joyously. She had said that quite clearly to me, but I was a fool. I hadn't been asked explicitly, so I hadn't realized it. She had made it clear as day that she didn't want to die. It wasn't that her cry for help. She didn't say as much that she wanted help, but even given that, it wasn't as though she wasn't looking for salvation. Without any family and unable to trust the police, she instead told somebody without any relation to the village, someone from a faraway place, me, help me. She had gone around and cut the phone cords. If I had made that phone call and learned of Yukie's death, I probably would have fallen into despair. If I was in that state, even if she was looking for help, her cries would have fallen on deaf ears. That's why, knowing everything, she had cut the phone cords.
Is that the Rika Furude time loop? Is how do I figure out how to get Akasaka to get me out of here? And that's her time loop every single fucking time.
That seems like what happened here.
She wanted even a little time to seek help from me. Oishi, just before now, had lamented that one of the younger officers got mixed up in a case, having been erased because he wasn't there. I was feeling the same way. If only I was there in June of 1983. I could have protected her. In 1983, it would have been 5 years since the kidnapping took place. While raising the only daughter Yukie had left me, putting all my youth and passion into my work, honing my wits and courage, wrestling with difficult cases. Nothing like my failing during the kidnapping incident would have occurred. I wouldn't have been slow to react in a one-on-one fight, and by that point, I'd jumped into foreign mafia-run gambling parlors where I'd learned to deal with automatic weapons, let alone handguns. I had grown so much that in 1983, I couldn't have even been compared to how I was in 1978. That's why, if I was by her side, I should have been able to save her life. No matter what conspiracy or false plots draw near, I definitely would have had to protect her. She, even though sounding resigned, should have still been able to ask me for help. I just didn't realize it. I couldn't realize it. Just as I wouldn't have realized it if I was told of Yukie's accident, I wasn't able to realize it. I wanted to cry. If I had taken her words to heart, I would have prevented Yukie's accident, and I would have been able to protect the girl to whom I owed a debt from even a predetermined death. She must have been expecting that from me. I learned about the disaster while watching the television in my house. Until I learned about that, I had forgotten about Hinamizawa. In order to recover from the shock of Yukie's death, I had to try to remove everything about that place from my memory. What an ungrateful fool I was. Even though in exchange for saving her, the girl had told me of a way to save Yukie. I was unable to accept her gratitude, and now here we were. She hadn't died in her sleep due to a natural disaster. She was split open while still alive, killed while suffering the disgrace of having her organs torn out. She must have known beforehand that on that day of that year, she would be killed in such a terrifying way. But even knowing what end awaited her, she was all too weak. A lone girl without anybody to rely on, unable to seek help, had to swallow her own predetermined death, and left in this mortal coil. She said she wanted to live. She said she wanted to live happily. That's all she wanted. She didn't ask for anything extravagant. For any person that was ever born, it was the very basest of desires. She never said a peep about wanting money or that she wished she was in somebody else's situation. She had said it. That if all deaths were preordained, then hers was probably also all according to plan. She might have been a lone, frail girl, but I don't think she would have accepted it all without at least putting up a fight. There must have been, in some small way, some form of resistance that she mustered. And with what she could muster, seeking my help was part of that. God damn it! I howled. I stomped the floor. Why did I become a police officer in the first place? How could I call myself an officer if I couldn't save a single girl from the misfortune that was awaiting her? Was it because there was so much going on at that time I couldn't process the fact that she was asking for help? Yeah, that's right. I was still green. If I was in that situation now, I would have definitely been able to help her. But it was already all over. Even if I wanted to settle the regrets she left behind, Hinamizawa, as a dangerous area, was still quarantined. Most of the people involved were already dead, with the few that did remain spread around the country, unable to be tracked. The stage of that tragedy was still off limits as well. The police investigation was put on hold, the cases slowly being buried in the sands of time. Just like how I wouldn't have known unless Oishi asked me about it.
Nakasaka-san, are you okay?
At some point, Oishi had returned with a notebook in hand. Until I saw the expression on Oishi's face, I didn't realize that I was in tears. I never realized she wanted help.
Nakasaka-san, calm down.
But it's all too late now. She was killed in such an atrocious manner. She was counting on me, but I couldn't save her. I couldn't save her.
I might also be at fault for not building up an amicable relationship with the village. Erika Furude had told me about it. I might have been able to extend a helping hand. I wasn't able to build up enough trust for that. That's something I regret.
When Oishi said the word trust, it weighed on me even more. Yeah, she had given me her trust. She trusted me. Meaning she thought I would have been able to ward off the fates of her foreseen death. She believed in that. I cried. I fell to my hands and knees as I began to bawl. Eventually, Oishi spoke quietly.
Nakasaka-san, does it upset you?
It does.
Then, there's only one way worth mentioning for Rika Furude to have her revenge.
Is there really? Is there a way to do that? Oishi showed me the pen and the notebook.
In order to properly mourn the death of Rika Furude, we have to at least find out the truth.
The truth.
Yes, and not just Rika Furude. Lots of people died. The lament must be immeasurable. But their deaths were left unsettled because of the disaster, and now we can't even investigate them, as the memory fades into oblivion. Many people died. The old man was killed. Kuma-chan was erased. Everybody was a victim, but the police can't even investigate it. Who's gonna take care of the potting regrets? Only we can. Akasaka-san.
I can't believe Oishi called him to investigate the deaths of Hinamizawa.
We find the truth.
Go! We'll find it. We've been around every one of the string of mysterious deaths. I've been around every one of the string of mysterious deaths and know all of the inner workings of the village. You were told an important truth the year before they happened by Rika Furude. We can do it.
But they're already dead. Oh.
That's right. Rika Furude died. You are too inexperienced, so you couldn't save her.
Ah.
Fuck Akasaka, man.
Oishi grabbed me, who was a wreck, and lifted me firmly by the lapels.
Lapels. That's why. To atone for that, we must reveal the truth. If what you say is true, then all the incidents were part of some greater design. If that's the case, then how we investigate needs to change it completely. I intend to spend tonight summarizing all the information you and I have, and then get in the contact with one of my former subordinates first thing in the morning. We're not going to let the case go cold. We're definitely going to crack it wide open.
Crack it open. Crack it open.
We will. Yes, several years have passed, but it's not beyond the statute of limitations. Even if the case has been postponed, it's not closed. It's still going. We are going to keep it going.
Oishi and I vowed to bring the truth of the case to light and stood up. Everything ended in 1985. I at least wanted to apologize and search for her grave. After the state autopsy, her remains were entrusted to one of the shrine's followers. In the future, when the quarantine on the Hinamizawa area was lifted, they would be returned to her family grave. However, unsure who exactly took the remains of Rika Furude, until today I couldn't even apologize to her. In the future, when the quarantine on Hinamizawa is lifted, all I could do was wait until whoever that person is returned to the grave. What I could do right now was not to apologize to her. Instead, I was able to meet her again. I would reveal the truths and dispel her regrets. Even now, sporadic eruptions of gas in the Hinamizawa area meant that the prospect of the quarantine being lifted wasn't happening anytime soon. Most likely, It seemed that she had no intentions of meeting me again until I found the truth. That's why the quarantine wouldn't be lifted, so I thought. Until the day I grasped the truth. It was the following year. Oishi and I co-authored a book on the string of mysterious deaths leading up to the great Hinamizawa disaster. I decided on the title.
Ryukishi's Akasaka?
Ryukishi's Oishi, dude.
Ryukishi's Oishi? Ryukishi's Oishi.
Higurashi, when they cry. That was because for those few days I was in Hinamizawa, that sound I remembered the most was the cry of the Higurashi. I could only wish that based on this book, those people involved with that incident could refresh their memories and bring light to a new truth. And more importantly, that nothing like this ever happens again. I wrote this in the afterword. Why did this tragedy happen? We can't reach the truth by ourselves. If you're reading this, please discover the truth. That is our only wish.
Fucking Keiichi?
Raudo Oishi Mamoru Akasaka.
Fucking Keiichi?
Keiichi, yes. Exact same thing Keiichi said.
This year, the quarantine on Hinamizawa still hasn't been lifted.
We're done with the question arts!
You're dumb.
It's over!
Oh, the best part of the game.
The all-cast review session.
I have to piss, and it's the
I
best
do
part of the
also
game.
have to piss.
Man, fuck Higurashi. This game sucks.
Dude,
Our only wish.
Honestly, best question arc in the game. That is my favorite one by far. But that's also because it's like a detective story, and you know me in detective stories.
Yeah.
That was great.
That was awesome.
That was honestly the best one. Like, I loved Watanagashi, but that was fucking better than Watanagashi.
Alright, take a piss.
Yeah.
Come back for all cast review session. We're
Yep.
53 minutes. We can do. Okay.
Yeah, we can either stop, we can do it in this video.
We'll do the all cast review session and then I'll give you the questions. Let's go. Bye.
What?